Hello, everyone. I'm Dennis Prager, and welcome on Solar Eclipse Day to the Dennis Prager Show. It's been my tradition every solar eclipse to have Dick Morris on, and I'm continuing that tradition.
Was I last on 99 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. That's right. And, you know, we were both kids.
Dennis. Dennis, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Eileen McGann, who's on the phone, and she and I wrote this book and all of our books together.
Hi, Dennis.
Eileen, it's a pleasure to meet you.
A pleasure to meet you. I've listened to Dick talk to you for years.
And I've met your wife at one of these radio things, and so I thought turnabout was fair play.
I totally agree with you. It's a delight to have you both, and since in any event you both wrote the book, it's exactly what I would want. Folks, this is a very scary book. This should be, you know what? It should really be, the problem, of course, is that it's nonfiction, but it should be under the horror section.
I think I agree with you.
Yes. No, folks.
Well, tell them how you begin the book, Eileen.
Well, if you see in the beginning of the book, we say that it's really the plot and everything. It's like a best-selling British spy novel.
Right. Let me tell everybody what it is. First of all, its title is Rogue Spooks, which is exactly what that is about. The Intelligence War on Donald Trump. Now, let me just say for my listeners, forgive me, the two of you, for just one moment. This interview and this subject bring me no joy. As a lover of this country and a respecter, admirer of the good people in intelligence, there is no joy in covering this subject. Yep. But it has become more and more apparent to me, an outsider. These two people know it from the inside. I mean, they've written this book. But just as an outsider, it has become more and more evident that there is corruption in our intelligence services. That doesn't mean everyone in them is corrupt, God forbid. But so that's where I guess I'll begin. Before even your evidence, how deep, in both directions, up to the top and up to the lowliest worker in intelligence, does the corruption go?
Well, you call it corruption. I think that's accurate, but we're not talking here about being paid off.
No, moral corruption.
When Obama took office 8 years ago, the first thing he did was to clean out the FBI and the CIA and replace all of the conservative people that were there. They were the bastions of domestic and foreign conservatism, with radicals and liberals. The head of the CIA was John Brennan, who actually voted communist in the 1980 election. Carter wasn't liberal enough for him. And Eric Holder at Justice. And the reason he did that was that he realized that the bureaucrats, the entrenched bureaucrats, which have come to be called deep state, were so entrenched and so stuck in their ways that they would go after him and destroy him, and he had to get rid of them. And then you fast forward to as Trump's election approached. They mobilized these folks to bring Trump down, and they followed the playbook that was written by the CIA in world countries around the globe to bring him down. Take a scandal, even if it's phony, make it up, make the roots deep, get leaks, get the responsive media to cover it sycophantically, and hem the president in until you can force him out. And this process began, and we explain it in the book, when Hillary and Obama's people put up $160,000 for a firm called Fusion to do negative research on Trump. They hired a British spy, former spy, named Christopher Steele. And Steele amassed this dossier claiming to substantiate the collusion between Trump and Putin. But in fact, it was such a tissue of lies and garbage, it was so discredited on the outset. The guy who supposedly arranged all this was Mike Cohn, who was Trump's lawyer, who the dossier has scurrying back and forth from Prague to meet with Russian intel. In fact, his passport showed he was not out of the country. He was never in. And they identified the guy who hacked Hillary's computer at DNC on behalf of the Russians, and he was in Siberia serving a 20-year term for pedophilia, no access to a phone. So all of this, and then the hookers peeing on the bed, all of this was so outrageous that nobody would touch it, nobody would publish it. So after the election, when Trump got elected, they were desperate to get this out there. And they went to a conference in Nova Scotia where McCain was speaking. And they went to McCain and persuaded him to take the dossier to Comey. And Comey got officially from a senator. He had seen it months before when he he authorized $50,000 to go to the spook to substantiate it, to justify it, and he couldn't do it. But now he got it officially from McCain. So he said, I got this from a senator. I have to show it to the president. And he showed it to Obama 10 days before he left office. And it leaked immediately into the media. But nobody believed it anyway because the charges were so crazy. So then Brennan and Holder, like conductors with batons, orchestrated their people to do the leaking. They told them, stay at your desk, don't leave, don't resign, don't quit. They took about 1,000 of them out of appointed positions and made them civil service and be fired. And then they orchestrated the leaking. 3 weeks after Trump took office, the New York Times ran a lead article.
These people who did the leaking, this is which branches of intelligence?
Yes.
I'm asking
CIA
you.
and FBI.
Okay, CIA and FBI.
And also some people in the White House, in the NSC, mainly basically holdovers from the Obama administration who have their own agenda. And if you think about what you said earlier, Dennis, about loving this country and being revolted by this, what we're seeing is people who decide that our process, our election process, is not okay. If they don't want you to be president, they are going to do everything possible to undermine the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump, and that's what they're doing here. And this phony dossier, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton supporters, compiled by a British spook who later, after he distributed it all over the place, who later said he doesn't know who the sources are, and he meant that it had to be investigated and verified. Well, nobody knew that. And that fake dossier that attacked President Trump in every way you can imagine was no less an intrusion on our electoral politics than the hacking of the DNC. This was an attempt to undermine the results of our presidential election.
And in the leaking, 3 weeks after Trump took office, the Times published a story that the FBI had actually heard Russian intel agents talking to Trump staffers arranging the collusion. And 4 months later, Comey admitted, oh, by the way, that story was wrong, never happened. But in the meantime, it structured the entire
Wait, are you
debate.
implying that the New York Times said something that isn't true?
But for once,
Eileen, I appreciate your laughter. Prior to your coming on, I was just reading sentence after sentence of sheer lies about the president and white supremacists that are reported as if they are givens and never with quotation marks.
Right. But this leak was the Times printed verbatim what they got from Comey and his people. And it wasn't even editorialized. It was just totally wrong. It was a lie. And there were so many leaks so that people came to believe that there was collusion. Now, the guy, Julian Assange, whose website published the dossier, published the hacks into Hillary's computer, said that it was not the Russians who did the hacking. And he says he can prove it. And the station chief of the CIA in Moscow for the last 5 years says there was no collusion. So this entire thing that is...
All right, so wait. So hold on. So that means that the station chief of the FBI in Moscow is an honest guy.
CIA, yes.
I'm sorry, CIA. So, yes, of course, it's international. So, what percentage, I know you can't give a precise figure, but what percentage would you say have been corrupted politically in the CIA, let's say?
Oh, that's hard to say. You have to divide the CIA into the political appointees and the people who were there from civil service, not counting the new civil servants who were political appointees.
All right, so think about that because, if percentage is not a good term, something has to guide people like me and my listeners to how extensive this politicization of the FBI and CIA might be. The book is Rogue Spooks, The Intelligence War on Donald Trump, Dick Morris and Eileen McGann. It is up at DennisPrager.com. We continue. And Prager University thanks you. Dick Morris and Eileen McGann are on. Rogue Spooks is their book, The Intelligence War on Donald Trump. As I said at the beginning, introducing you, this is a very scary book. So I asked you, how pervasive do you feel this politicization of the FBI and CIA is?
Well, I think one way to look at it is to realize, of course, that it is not the men and women around the world who are protecting us in our intelligence agencies who are in the field working who are involved in this. It's the leadership. It's the people with influence. So when you had John Brennan, as head of the CIA, who had nothing but contempt for the president, and he went his own way. And it is those political appointees who have a different point of view who are rogue. They just are not following the plan of what should be done and what is supposed to be done in their agencies.
Eileen, what is your and Dick's or either one of you or both of your theory? For example, I was stunned that we got an actual transcript of a president of the United States privately talking to the Prime Minister of Australia. How did that come out?
Well, I think it came out because just what we're talking about. You have people in the White House and in these agencies who are dedicated to destroying Donald Trump. That's why we call it the intelligence war. This isn't a simple disagreement. This is a declaration of war. So it's unprecedented. They're leaking conversations. Every day, if you read the New York Times and the Washington Post, all the major articles refer to unnamed sources who asked not to be identified because the material was classified or confidential. Now, those people need to be found and weeded out.
Can they be?
I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah, well,
that's what
okay.
we have to do.
Well, that's the question. If the corruption is that high up, then what can you do to stop it?
Well, I believe that Trump should appoint a special prosecutor of his own through Jeff Sessions.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good idea.
After the leaks, just like Bush appointed a special prosecutor to find out who leaked the Valerie Plame identity. There should be a special prosecutor who investigates these leaks and sets Mueller back on his heels because he's going to be on the defensive when each of his staff are being investigated.
Did you folks happen to see the article in, of all places, and I have to admit, I got to give credit where it is due, The Nation?
Yes.
That was a very long, I read every word of it, and I'm going to bring it to my listeners' attention this week. That was quite devastating that there was no collusion and everyone now knows it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think that this was a scandal. Hillary had tried everything else. She'd run against his bankruptcies, his divorces, his troubles with importation of labor, his university.
Not revealing his tax returns.
Yeah, and none of it worked. So he said a few nice words about Putin, and the British reported that the Russians were trying to hack into the democratic computers, and they developed this storyline about Putin trying to take over the election. And Hillary had this dossier. She used it during the debates and during the campaign. And when that failed, they decided to use it to destroy the Trump administration. And when Comey was able to frame the president for obstruction of justice, which really was just telling Comey what to do, from his point of view, Dennis Prager tells his assistant, I don't want you to focus on topic A, I want to do topic B. That's a boss telling a subordinate what to do. Comey, when Trump did that with Comey, that's obstruction of justice. And it's obstruction of justice with a non-existent scandal underneath it. And I think that whole point was to take the initiative away from Trump, block him at the outset, dent his numbers, and then close in for the kill with other scandals.
All right,
the latest closing in was Steve Bannon, where they used the Charlottesville thing to oust Bannon because he's the only guy in there who's speaking the truth to power.
Fascinating. So let me ask you before you go, because and if you don't have an answer, you don't have an answer. But I am so curious. Do you think Mueller knows he's investigated nothing? He's investigated.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Mueller is Comey's best friend.
I know that.
Together they investigated Martha Stewart. Together they framed, investigated, and damn near convicted Steve Hazlitt, the anthrax bomber. He turned out not to be that, but killed himself because of the scrutiny. And their record is terrible. They're a tag team. And Comey's job was to get Mueller in and use himself as a sacrificial lamb to do that.
Right. So what? So wait. I want to go back to the original. You said yes to my question. Does Mueller know he's pursuing nothing?
Yes. He and Comey and the other leaders.
Right. So what will he do with nothing?
He'll go from nothing to something, because I'm a lawyer. I know what prosecutors can do. They can do pretty much what they want. So if you are in front of a D.C. grand jury, you can bring whatever you want there, whatever you find. So they're not going to – I mean, even Comey admitted to Congress that there was nothing there about collusion with Trump. That didn't stop him from going further. Now, as you mentioned earlier, he's going to go wherever it leads him, wherever he wants to go. Tax returns, the Jared Kushner and his business. I mean, they will stop at nothing. And even if they don't get – they're going to be far from collusion, I believe, and they're going to be on to other things like obstruction of justice.
Why was Mueller hired for this? Why was he appointed?
Because the defect with Donald Trump is when he starts getting unpopular and people start dumping on something he's doing, he retreats to improve his image. And they retreated one step backward to salvage because all the furor after Comey was fired, and they ended up with a shackle that's going to be very hard to remove around their neck.
And I think that they also, they're going after Manafort. Whatever Manafort was involved in, if anything, was before he was working for Donald Trump. He had nothing to do with that.
Eileen, you're a lawyer. What is the saying? I think
you can indict a ham sandwich.
Yes, indict a ham sandwich. Right,
yeah.
a grand jury
can. True.
Yeah,
that's pretty true.
And Dennis, just think for a minute about moving the grand jury from Virginia to Washington. Why would you do that? You would do that so you can get a jury that voted 93% for Hillary.
All right. I want everybody to know this is important reading. Rogue Spooks, The Intelligence War on Donald Trump. And Eileen, we have to meet in person once.
I hope so, and thank you for having me on, too.
No, both of you. It's a delight. Thank you very, very much. God, I tell you. It's living in a very difficult time for America, not because of what the press is reporting. On the contrary, it's the opposite of what the press is reporting. As I have been telling you for all 3 hours of this show today, and so many others, we are living through mass hysteria. Mass hysteria. And it's not a good thing for a good society. All right, much more to report, including terror in Europe. You're listening to The Dennis Prager Show. Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. And it is with some emotional ambivalence that I introduce my guest, Ami Horowitz.
Hit me! There's not a minute to spare.
Yep. I feel like I'm in my gym working out right now. This is workout music. Now, you may wonder, why do I have any emotional ambivalence? Because I really like the guy. And then he's going to leave, and I'm going to be sad.
Oh.
God, I got out of that one. Gee, that was fast. Ami Horowitz is a crack-up, everybody. He cracks me up. The question, do you crack yourself up?
All the time.
You do?
All the time.
No, that is good. That is good. There are people who are, you're funny, but there are people who are not funny, but they crack themselves up.
Oh, sure.
So,
of course.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a gift from God to not be funny, but crack yourself up.
My family will disagree with you. They don't
think you're funny?
They don't think I'm funny, and they particularly don't like when I crack myself up.
Interesting. But your mother is here with you. I love when you bring your mom.
Thank you.
Your mom was at my concert last week. I'm very touched. It was a great night. Ami Horowitz makes videos that talking about emotional ambivalence, and I'm now being very serious, they create in every instance emotional ambivalence because you are laughing and you are crying at the same time. The latest one, where you asked young people, are they for income equality? It wasn't even for equality. It was for income equality.
Oh, they're definitely not in favor of equality of opportunity, right? Because by definition, if you have equality of opportunity, which we all share as a massive value, you're going to have unequal distribution.
Right. Okay. That immediately shows. Did you go to college?
I did.
And you think that clearly?
What do we don't learn anything in college. You think I remember anything? I had a wasted, I
Right.
studied political science.
Oh, my God,
A complete
you did?
and total waste of, and philosophy. Philosophy less so, but both.
Oh, my God, you studied political science?
It's a means to an end. You just need the degree.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know if any more people do need degrees. That's a very interesting and tough subject. But anyway, back to you. So where was this in New York City?
This is in Manhattan.
So you randomly walked over to young people?
Randomly walked over. Did not look for anybody in particular. It was random people.
All right,
in
so
this
I
neighborhood.
always have to ask this because,
Sure.
because of the honesty issue to me. So everyone everyone you have on the video I watched, which is at Fox now, right? It's going
Right.
to be on Fox, and then
Yeah.
it's going to be at Prager University. So everyone I saw is for income equality.
Right.
Did you weed out
100% of the people I spoke to said income equality is a significant, if not the most important value that they
You
hold.
did not weed out one dissenting view.
No. Now, of the people who, not to give away the punchline of the video, but of the people who then said they would rather us be part of a Venezuelan economic model than the current capitalist system we have, of the 30 people I asked, 9 said, I don't know enough about Venezuela to give you an answer, and 21 said Venezuela is the model we should be looking at as opposed to our own economic model. After...
I'm quiet, folks, because my mouth is open.
And to be clear, I took it a step further to make sure they understood what's happening in Venezuela. I said there are food lines, they can't get basic
I heard.
necessities.
That's right.
There's violence in the street. Even after I've qualified what Venezuela is like, they still answer the same way. Which if I can say one more thing about this, and I'm going to wade into very controversial territory here. And as you know, I like to shy away from controversy. If you ask me what's more damaging to our country, what is more threatening to our way of life, our fabric of identity that we have in this country, is it several thousand neo-Nazis, or is it the people in this video who believe that Venezuela is a more important model to us?
Well, it ain't controversial on the Dennis Prager Show. The threat of Nazis in the United States in the list of 100 top threats is number 100. And if there were 200 top threats, it would be number 200. But you are entirely right.
Oh, so you're a white supremacist supporter then?
Yeah,
You're
that's
obviously
right.
clearly
That's
a neo-Nazi,
right.
a
That's
supporter
right.
of neo-Nazis.
There you go. Although I must say, Rabbi Wolpe agreed that when we had our dialogue Sunday night. We'll be back in a moment. Particular bumper music? The living martyr is suffering a bout of martyrdom right now. No, I'm not joking. That's why he's suffering. You're looking at the Trump things that we didn't play? Oh, is that right? All right, so fine. That's no problem. Let me do Hillsdale. It's an honor to do Hillsdale. PragerForHillsdale.com. Isn't that cool? Prager for Hillsdale. How about we should do Prager for a lot of things? Prager for goodness. Let's try to get that website, Prager for goodness. Anyway, Hillsdale is close to goodness. Hillsdale has these courses for free, which you can take. And you just sign up. But the best right now is their offer, which is always there, to be honest, is to get Imprimis. Every month they send you a speech that's given by some guest lecturer or teacher at Hillsdale on some very important subject of the day. So go to PragerForHillsdale.com, learn about this wonderful country, 15-minute courses, that's all they ask of you. And again, it is all free, PragerForHillsdale.com. And right now, this is Prager for Horowitz. It's not a website, but it is a fact. I like what you do. His latest video is asking young people in New York City for if they support income equality, and he gives me his word, and I know he tells the truth. I'm not joking. I know he does. Everyone you asked said yes. Did they even understand?
No. So of the 30 people, 9 said they didn't know enough about Venezuela.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I'm saying I just wanted income equality.
Oh, yeah, every single one.
Yes.
Every single one.
No, not Venezuela. Yes, all 30.
Right. And again, as opposed to income, as opposed to economic.
All right. So what if you had said, do you therefore believe that a surgeon and a doorman should get the same wage?
So it's funny you say that, because in our discussions, what I didn't put in because it's just the discussions are too long, but we oftentimes will get into a discussion about their answers. So one person actually used the example of surgeon to garbage man. And he said they should be earning the same thing. So, well, a garbage man is as important as anybody else.
Well,
because
by the way, the garbage man is as important. My brother is a professor of medicine at Columbia, and he has always said sanitation workers have done more for health than doctors.
So that guy was wiser than I thought.
No, that was, but it still doesn't matter. The amount of time it took my brother to become a doctor is far greater than the amount of time and work it takes to become a sanitation worker. Even as valuable as the sanitation workers' work is, somebody has to compensate somebody for all the work they did. I mean, but so anyway, this person did say that?
Yeah. But you're looking at the wrong way, because they're not looking at the amount. They're not even looking about what that person gives back to society. They're not looking at what the kind of work the guy put into it. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? It's about every human being is equal. Every culture is equal. Every person is equal. So therefore, they need to all be on equal planes. And not just economically, but from every perspective, the person should be on equal planes. Morally, the way we view them, right? So that's why we always have, is there evil in the world?
You know what would
These people also say there's no evil in the world.
You were talking about what you just said. I was reading more from this fantastic website, Gatestone, which I read regularly. And they were talking about how many churches in France are closing, becoming parking lots, movie theaters, mosques, and how many mosques are being built while churches are being destroyed in France. It would be an interesting thing for you to go to France with an interpreter, and just say, does it trouble you that that so many churches here are being closed? And does it trouble you that so many mosques are being built in their place? It would just be interesting. And for Muslims listening, the reason that we are troubled, that I am troubled, is not because any individual Muslim is not a worthy person, or it's nonsense. That has nothing to do with that. However, I do fear the Islamicization of Europe, just as I do the Islamization of almost any other country, because it doesn't mean human rights will be better. Things don't go well when that happens. All right? That's just a fact. And many Muslims acknowledge it. I had a debate at Claremont Graduate University with the head of the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, one of the leading Muslim organizations in America. Does Islam need a reformation? And I said yes. And he said Muslims need a reformation, not Islam. Okay, it was an interesting line. But we both acknowledge things are pretty bad today. Anyway, where's your video viewable?
You can go on AmiHorowitz.com. You can go on the Prager website.
It's at DennisPrager.com. And in 2 days, it'll be at PragerU. Okay, terrific. Now, one final thing. You said you had a sort of insight. You were just in Machu Picchu in Peru.
Yes.
I've been to Peru twice, and I haven't been to Machu Picchu.
How's that even possible? That's the only thing worth doing there.
That is so...
It's an overstatement. All right, I overstepped my bounds.
I want to say to my Peruvian listeners, I completely dissent from that. Did we have a great time in Peru? Thank you. I looked at the living water. We loved Peru. Anyway, you bigot. What? So why was your insight at Machu Picchu?
Hot take on Machu Picchu. Probably the first time you ever heard those words on air.
Correct.
Fair to say?
Yes, never heard that. Yes.
So, okay, Machu Picchu, it's a place that when you go to Peru, it's kind of, at least for me, I thought
you should go. I wish
I
had gone, yes.
So we get up to Machu Picchu, and we're walking around. And what essentially, for those who don't know, Machu Picchu is a set of ruins from the Incas.
Correct.
Who dominated that area, pre-Columbian civilization. And people are oohing and eyeing at what they built and the engineering prowess, everybody. And I said, that's interesting. I looked up when they existed. They existed in the 1500s. There was nothing impressive engineering-wise on what they built in the 1500s. What was being built in Europe, what was built 4,000 years ago in Egypt was more interesting and more impressive than what the Peruvians built.
That is very... Is that... And you have more?
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. In Peru.
So now we're talking about Inca equality.
Well,
you like that? You see what I did there? Did you see what I did there?
Yes, exactly. That's good. Very good. It took me a moment. That was bad. Income equality, Inca equality. Maybe they thought you were asking about Inca equality.
Maybe they misunderstood what I was saying.
Yeah.
I'm sometimes, especially when I drink early in the morning, I slur my words a little bit.
I totally understand. So go on. What is your next insight?
So we end up in Machu Picchu, and we're looking around, and I've seen these type of ruins everywhere. This didn't particularly impress me, so I thought maybe I was missing something. And I started speaking to people who were there, mostly Europeans and Americans, and asking. So I don't know what's so. They were oohing and eyeing. What's so impressive? I said, look what they built, and in the time frame that they built it in. And so I really did not remember when the Incas were around, so I looked it up on my phone. So the Incas existed between the 14. It's actually a very small time where their civilization thrived between the 1400s and the 1500s A.D., not B.C., A.D. I thought to myself, that doesn't seem like a long time ago for this. They still had thatched huts. It was all built out of stone. So I started looking things up online, and I came across this phenomenal article. It really was very insightful. And it was by the Smithsonian Magazine. One would say that's clearly one of the most reputable magazines when it comes to this type of thing. The earliest and greatest engineers were the Incas. Then I realized this was all cultural relativity. What I was witnessing right here was white liberal people trying to raise up a culture, which, by the way, was also extraordinarily morally brutal. Even at this time, they were still slaughtering children to the gods, okay, and virgins to the gods. But they were looking at this and saying, never mind what was being built in Europe at the time, or frankly, what the Egyptians built 4,000 years earlier, which was more impressive than this.
That's right.
But I realized it was an epiphany. It was all about trying to create raising them up. Again, it comes down to equality.
That Smithsonian thing is frightening. All right, everybody. Thank you, Ami Horowitz. Check out his video. It's up at DennisPrager.com. of my favorite people in the world is on the line. Heather Macdonald, contributing editor to City Journal. It's a fantastic magazine, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, an institute that does not belong in Manhattan but is there anyway. In that alone, they are heroes. Heather Macdonald, how are you?
Well, hey, good to talk to you again, Dennis. Thank you for having me on.
Are you coming to my concert tomorrow night?
I certainly am. I am so looking forward to that Haydn. Thrilling piece of music. I hope everybody shows up, supports classical music, supports politically free classical music, and one of the most greatest Haydn symphonies there is, with the horn solo and Sturm und Drang pathos.
You're awesome. By the way, then you should know it is sold out.
Oh, good. Well, that'll show them.
It is. I know. Read my column today. Sometimes the good guys win. That's the name of my column today.
Well, the left is going to, at some point, wise up and realize that the more they protest, the more they produce a counter-reaction and give people that they're trying to silence more publicity. So I say bring it on.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although your column today in the Wall Street Journal is what I want to talk to you about. And it's very disconcerting. I made reference to it in the first hour, that this notion that we have, well, at least once they leave college, then go into the quote-unquote real world, they will have to reorient their thinking toward reality. But as you point out, with businesses, which is, after all, theoretically the epitome of the real world, with businesses now so politically correct left, that may not be the case.
It's certainly not the case, Dennis. The HR departments, human relations departments in businesses now are virtually colonized by women's studies and ethnic studies majors, and they have embraced with gusto the same identity politics that is being generated by universities, and they engage in this very bizarre situation where they will, if they're sued, they will assert that they are colorblind and treat their employees fairly, which I believe is absolutely the case, and yet they insist on putting all their employees through thousands, if not millions of dollars of completely specious anti-bias, implicit bias training on the assumption that their own employees and their managers are so sexist and bigoted that they're unable to make fair employee decisions. And meanwhile, China is going to start running circles around us because it is still a meritocracy, and its corporations, at least, are not infected by identity politics.
Well, you gave the most obvious example is the most recent with Google, and of course you remember Brendan Eich at Firefox.
Remind me about that.
Yeah, he was the guy at Fire. He was the CEO, and he had voted for Prop 8 in California to keep marriage defined as a male-female, and he was let go, and there was a huge reaction to that. But what I mentioned, and I'd like you to comment on, is there is something happening in America that very few people are aware of. The number of Americans who keep silent about their views at their place of work, lest they suffer for it.
Well, it's a very amazing situation in the United States today. I believe that the courts are by and large still committed to the First Amendment. So in theory, we have stronger free speech protections than anything in Europe. And if something gets brought into court, like speech codes on universities have almost uniformly been struck down by federal judges who are not necessarily conservative in their outlook. But that almost becomes a secondary matter when you have informal social stigma now working so strongly to silence anybody who dares to challenge the victimology ideology that now reigns on corporations. And Silicon Valley, of course, is the worst. And they're, 30% of our economy?
Yeah, hold on a second. Heather Macdonald, I may let go a few of your calls because of this topic. Call in if you have to shut up at work. August is fundraising month for Prager University, and this week is fund matching week. A donor has agreed to match whatever you give. So if you give $1 million, he will give $1 million. I'm kidding. I don't know what. I don't think he's matching $1 million. Is that correct? Is there a limit?
There's always a limit.
No, whatever you give will be matched. So you're giving twice as much as ever, and we are making a big difference. 400 million views this year. So please go to PragerU.com or my website, or just call 323-5-PRAGER. Heather Macdonald has made 3 videos for us, and they've been big hits. She is my guest. She has a piece in the Wall Street Journal, and we are talking about the suppression of speech in this country, which is new. When I was a kid, kids used to yell at each other, Heather. I remember this so vividly. Kids would say stupid things to each other like boys would. I'm sure girls said stupid things, but I don't know what they did. I was with the boys. And they'd yell. One kid would yell at another, and he goes, shut up. And the other kid would say, which is completely irrelevant, but I remember it. It was a common response. What do you mean, shut up? It's a free country. And I don't think kids say that today.
No, and they certainly don't say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We now glorify victimhood. And what we have starting at the university that then spreads outward is the idea that there is nothing that confers greater status than being able to claim that you're oppressed by white racism, American racism, sexism, patriarchy, homophobia, and that you are lethally injured by any idea that somehow challenges your claim to victimhood. And so the idea of being resilient or be able to make arguments back or strong is completely thrown out the window. And we have this perverse situation where to declare yourself weak and vulnerable is actually a sign of power.
Do you know that in one of the protests against my conducting, they made the argument, don't play for Dennis Prager and don't attend the concert. After all, he has said that if there is no God, ethics are subjective. How will atheists in the orchestra feel?
People are apparently not able to make rational arguments anymore, and feel like they are entitled to some kind of zone of privilege to not hear anything that contradicts their own worldview. I think by now, news moves so fast in this age of Trump that we've forgotten just how utterly shocking the firing of James Damore was from Google for simply having written a highly reasonable, well-thought-out memo.
Right.
And yet this man has now lost his job. You talk about self-censorship. This is going to cause every single employee to never voice something that might jeopardize the reigning politically correct consensus.
All my life in broadcasting, it's over 30 years, I have told people it is one of the great left-wing myths that big business is conservative. But now it's worse than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. One keeps wondering, when is capitalist self-interest going to kick in? And it kind of does, but it's a very bizarre, divided place where they are committed to an ideology that, taken to its not even an extreme, is right next door, is anti-business, anti-competition, but they are so committed to feeling self-righteous and morally virtuous that they want to align themselves with the academic left and somehow feel like it's not going to come after them, that they can continue being capitalists in some respects and enjoy freedom of the market while promoting an ideology that ultimately tends inexorably, and nobody understands this better than you, Dennis, towards socialism and worse, frankly.
That's right. Croydon, Indiana. Kim. Hello, Kim. Dennis Prager and Heather Macdonald. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you.
I know you're excited about your concert. I've been hearing about that, so I hope it goes out really well and you enjoy yourself in the process.
That's very kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I called because you asked people to talk about if their if their livelihood has been threatened by the human resources and companies going politically correct. And I was listening to your guest speaker, and that is occurring to me at this point in time. I've worked with this company for nearly 19 years, and I've seen a major backslide for the feelings of the snowflake individuals, these millennials that are coming up. And I'm on final notice and been labeled a racist. I'm feeling, and just because I express my feelings that are not at 5 years ago or more, they would have been considered, people understood what I was talking about, and now it's just automatically, my feelings are hurt, so we got to write Kim up again.
Yep, yep. What do you say to that, Heather?
Well, unfortunately, we have a cell phone to cell phone problem here, so I only got some of what Kim was saying, but I think she said that it's gotten worse, that when she was in the corporate world before...
Right, and that, one or two snowflakes and you're out.
Right, if somebody makes a complaint against you.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how we stop this thing, but it's moving very quickly.
Yes.
And the problem is it's being generated by the universities that are just absolutely monolithic and seemingly unstoppable because parents are so desperate to credentialize their children.
That's it.
So,
we got to talk about that one day. The desperation to credentialize your children. God bless you, Heather Macdonald. We'll be back. I'm Dennis Prager. Alan has ever come out with a pun. You know why? It's a drop silly. Nothing silly has ever emanated from Alan since birth. He came out somber. Now, somber is not unhappy, by the way. That's very important. You are not an unhappy man. Mature. You prefer mature. He came out mature. I believe that. Yep. All right, let's see. Dawn in Minneapolis wants to know, will I make a video on Chairman Mao? Absolutely. Needs to be done. Very good point. Wonder if how YouTube will react to that. David in Atlanta wants to know if there'll be a broadcast of me conducting. No, there won't because unions don't allow it. It don't start me on that, what they don't allow, which would be good, so good for the orchestra. But that's the way it works. Let's see now. His grandson's professor told him he can only teach one side or he will lose his job. That's Lori in Elmwood Park, Illinois. This is happening all over the country. And let's go to Michael in Philadelphia. Hi, Michael. Dennis Prager.
Mr. Prager, how are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
I just wanted to comment. I'm in a bit of an atypical industry to what the majority of your callers, I assume, would be in. I'm in the restaurant industry. I've been for about 25-plus years now. Worked in more restaurants than I care to say. Overwhelmingly so, for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, overwhelmingly so, management and or ownership is liberal. Now, very briefly, my experience as it pertains to what you were saying is it's not that they won't allow you to speak. I can certainly speak and espouse my conservative Christian opinions, thoughts, what have you, with the other guys or women, as we're all bantering around maybe before work or during a break or something. However, this has happened more than once. They don't stop you, but when it gets in their head that you're on the other side or, quote-unquote, the enemy, you're looked at a different way, and how you're treated subsequent to that is different. And
That's right. That's entirely accurate. Why that is happening, I have to explain at length. Stay tuned. We continue on the Dennis Prager Show. Hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I welcome you to the Dennis Prager Show. I have a terrific guest on now, Pete Hegseth, Fox News contributor. He's sort of omnipresent on Fox News. In fact, there are people who start the week. It's a sort of a Las Vegas betting thing. Where will Hegseth show up? Which is a pretty big credit to you, my friend. And
well, it's very generous.
Yes, you're a good man. And he is a Fox News contributor and an Iraq War veteran, for which I can only say God bless you. And he gives the newest video from Prager University, How Iraq Was Won and Lost. And it's got 1 million views in the first day. And may it have 330 million views so that Americans know. No, that's my dream. That is my dream, Pete.
Well, I want to tell you, and I said this before, but it's true. What you're doing at Prager University is exactly what this country needs. It's a visual medium in a consumable length that tells a story and rebuts the counter-narrative that so often gets entrenched in our culture today. So the chance to tell that story means everything to me, especially on behalf of other Iraq vets who went and fought in that war and have seen it mischaracterized. And so to get a chance to set the record straight, and because history matters, the legacy of wars matter, as we see and know today, and it's quite an honor. So thank you for what you're doing.
You would have been very touched. Yesterday, I think within an hour of the video going up, a man called whose son was killed in Iraq, I believe from Florida, and he was so happy that your video was out there to tell the world what his son died for. See, that's a big part of the mission you and I have.
I get chills just hearing that. I've got a couple of messages similar to that since, just saying thank you. I haven't seen this anywhere. No one makes this case. Everyone just throws it away. The legacy of ISIS, creates this stain on what was actually accomplished. And it is those Gold Star families and wives and others who live with that legacy no matter what. It's vets from Vietnam and elsewhere who have that very same experience.
That's right.
Never had the ability to punch back the way you do. So thank you.
Well, obviously, thank you. Good. I'm glad you got that feedback too. You're going to get a lot of it. I have no doubt. There's only one thing worse than. This is a painful thing to say because as a parent, it's very hard to go where these people are. But there is something more painful than losing a child, and that is being told that it was for naught.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. Listen, we have legions of Americans willing to send their young men and women into battle on behalf of their government, whether they agree with every aspect of that war or not, because they have faith that their government is sending there in the purpose and advancement of freedom, in the purpose and advancement of their own safety. And when you hear that instead it was to check a box or for a political narrative or to save face, or because the commander-in-chief never actually believed in that war to begin with. And that's what makes the surge so special, is that George W. Bush, even though the war had not gone the way it was supposed to for the first number of years, was truly committed to winning it. And he bucked the conventional wisdom of his moment and the conventional wisdom of some of his generals who were advising him to ultimately cut and run, and said, no, I owe it to the men and women who have fought this to get it right on behalf of the security of our nation. That's also what makes what I call a fake surge in Afghanistan under Barack Obama such a sin. To send men and women into combat when you never believed in that war to begin with, and where you told the enemy when you were going to leave at the beginning, is ultimate betrayal of those who serve, even though they still go there and serve honorably. All you want is someone who has your back in those moments then I think families can live comfortable saying, I gave a sacrifice at the altar of freedom that 240 years of Americans have done because that's what our experiment requires. But to feel like it was for naught, or because while a commander-in-chief didn't believe, is a detriment.
All right.
So I honor what the president did.
When we come back, I want you to answer this big argument. Obama's leaving was only a fulfillment of a pledge made and an agreement made with the Iraqi government by President Bush before him. Pete Hegseth's video is the latest at Prager University on Iraq. Back in a moment. It's a major video. We won and then lost. That is exactly what happened in Iraq. Pete Hegseth was there. Pete Hegseth gives the video. Pete Hegseth is in your home on Fox News regularly. So, Pete, how do you answer this? Because I have raised this often, and it's as inevitable as the sun rising in the east that some caller, and I don't say this as a negative on the caller, but some caller or callers will state, well, that agreement to leave Iraq was signed by George W. Bush. What do you answer that?
Well, first of all, I would recommend everyone to see the video because I think the video lays it out very, very well exactly what happened. It was always premised on a residual commitment that was premised on a status of forces agreement. We were going to sign an agreement with the Iraqi government to stay in some capacity to ensure the gains that we made were not given away. Well, that was premised on this agreement that we would sign a document that we mutually recognize what the status of our troops would be in that country. Iraq insisted that, because of political pressures internal to Iraq, and some of it had to do with sectarianism, they wanted the ability to prosecute our troops should they have misconduct in the country. Well, that's never going to fly. We have sovereignty over how we prosecute our own troops and their conduct of the war. So we balked at it, and rightfully so. The Obama administration handled that properly. The problem is they then used it. They stopped negotiating rather than continue the negotiations because we have the upper hand. We have the leverage. We're still the strongest power in that country. So rather than negotiate, we quit. And it was used as an excuse to say, well, we have to leave. They kicked us out. And that was how they fulfilled their campaign promise of no troops at all in Iraq. That was the pledge of President Obama. That's what he wanted to do. And so they did. They pulled everyone out saying, well, we just couldn't get a deal done. If we want to get a deal done as the United States of America after what we've done there for 7-8 years, we could have gotten it done through a combination of diplomacy and our military-to-military relationship. He used it as an opportunity to retreat. We pulled every single last troop out. We didn't follow through on our commitment, and as a result, Iraq faded into what we know today, which is the eventual taking over of ISIS and their caliphate and the black flag flying over the places that we gave so much. So, but I love this about the video as well. It lays out what both Barack Obama and Joe Biden said once they were in power in 2009 and 2010. They deemed Iraq an overwhelming success that would be just that. They just didn't understand that success requires continued commitment, which they gave away.
Folks, it's so important what you heard. If I may put it in other words, the Iraqi regime, it's almost worked in tandem with the Obama administration. What excuse would you like to be able to take your troops out?
Yes, that's exactly right. And listen, this is not to say that Nouri al-Maliki was a perfect partner. He wasn't at all. He's a tool of Iran. I mean, it was not a perfect scenario, but the combination of commitment, pressure, and the sort of momentum that was had there was showing very true signs of success. And so rather than follow through on that, we gave it away, which invited Iran to be the real power broker, which is what eventually happened.
You know, it's part of a larger scenario. Where has the American soldier showed up with the American flag and liberty decreased?
That's right. That is, of course, what makes America as exceptional is we take ground in order to improve that ground and give it back. I mean, only look. The amazing example of that is the partner that we have in Japan today. I mean, just understand what happened there, who they were, how viciously we fought them. We dropped 2 nuclear bombs on their soil to end the war and preserve American lives. Now they're the 3rd largest economy in the world and an amazing partner and a bulwark in a region where we need one in the face of North Korea and China. I mean, America is the absolute number one, bar none, exception to the rule in human history. We fight wars to preserve freedom and give freedom. We don't fight because we hate the other. We fight because we love what we have in our own nation and will be willing to preserve it and spread freedom for people who deserve it around the world, should they be willing to preserve it themselves. The Iraqis showed that willingness. Unfortunately, we weren't able to follow through the way that we wanted to.
Well, I could talk to you all day, and maybe one day that'll happen. Do you smoke cigars?
I do, anytime.
Oh, my God, you're almost perfect.
No, far from it. But I love fellow travelers who are fighters and love freedom like you. So whatever you need, Dennis, you say the word.
Bless you, really. I am honored to have you give a PragerU video, and it won't be the first. And it wasn't the first. How many have you given already?
Two. We did one on the VA, and
that's right.
So
yes.
Any
all right.
Subject, let me know.
Okay. Just stay handsome.
You stay smart and handsome.
Okay.
We'll keep it up.
Thank you, my friend.
All right,
God bless. Bye-bye. He's special. He is special. And by the way, my wife does think he's very handsome. That was added specifically because of that. All right, my friends. It's so big. It is so big, all of this stuff. It brings me no joy to say whatever the left touches, it ultimately ruins. Iraq was, example number 804439278. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show.